Bon après-midi à tous et bienvenue à cette rencontre du comité de dérogation pour la Ville d'Ottawa. Welcome everyone to this hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa. We are a City of Ottawa quasi-judicial tribunal that holds public hearings on applications and consider Planning Act applications, which includes mostly minor variances and consent applications, but we do get the odd validation of title and permissions. So we are back to being in person, so I think everybody's aware of that. We do facilitate an online participation if that's of interest, and of course, all you need to do is let our committee staff know. We are also live streaming on YouTube, and the video will be archived and available for future viewing by the public on the committee's website. My name is Anne Tremblay, and I'll be chairing the hearings today. With me are my fellow panel members, Member Blatherwick, Member Lecueillier, Member Kuckligan, and Member Coakley, who will be joining us shortly online. In terms of the procedures, you all saw that there was essentially an agenda at the start of the hearing. We will be proceeding in a different order. We typically go with adjournments and we go with applications that are non-controversial and uncomplicated, and then we go to some of the heavier duty applications. Note that the panel members have reviewed all of the information that's been put on file up until now. So if it looks like we're making quick decisions, it's not that at all. We have looked at everything. We've ensured that we're familiar with any concerns or any opposition or any technical comments. And then we proceed to making a decision, but that's already been done before we get here. What we do like to have when we get into this hearing is to hear oral presentations from people, because that is the evidence that we don't have. So as part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant is required to post a sign on the property in question before the hearing. You can also have a confirmation in writing. If we don't have either the confirmation in writing or a sworn affirmation or oath at the beginning of the hearing on your application, then we need to adjourn it because we can't hear it. So my understanding is we have all of the stat decks in at this point. Thank you very much. That's good. Okay. So the way we like to work is if it's a simple application, we probably won't ask you for presentation and we'll go straight to questions from the panel members. And we may ask questions of planning staff in order to get some clarification. Then we would like to hear from the public. And I have a speakers list, and what I do is I typically go to the speakers list first, and then I will make a general call out to anyone who has an interest in the application and who wants to be heard by the committee. If you aren't on my list, then I will need you to provide your full name and your address right from the start, because we need that for the oral record of the proceedings. So once we get to the end of hearing on an application, and I did fail to mention, you've got 5 minutes before us, and any extension of that is at the discretion of myself. So then after we're done through hearing all of the testimony and considered what we've heard, we can make an oral decision. We can either grant or deny, but we can also reserve on the application if we find that we've received a lot of oral evidence that we weren't familiar with before and we want more time to deliberate amongst ourselves. In that case, we close the hearings for the day, we stay behind, we finish our work, and then render a decision. In all cases, within 10 days, the Committee of Adjustment does send an official written decision and reasons to it to all parties and participants and anyone who has requested a copy of the decision. All right, if anyone needs the, s'il y en a qui aimerait avoir les consignes en français, n'hésitez pas de me faire signe, ça va me faire plaisir. So, starting to business then, if there's any declarations of conflict of interest, and I believe we do have. Yes.
Yes, Madam Chair, I have item number 3. I have a conflict. I want to avoid any perception of conflict in that item. It's the properties in my immediate neighborhood.
All right, thank you, Member Keklikan. Anyone else for either the agenda items on our agenda or the other panel? So I'm seeing none for the record. Okay, so at this point, I think what we'll do, and I don't think we have any minutes to approve at this point. Do we have? No, we have no other business. Okay.
Madam
Oh,
Chair.
yes, we do. Yes, we do. Thank you. Thank you. We do. I saw it right here. Okay, so I'm going to need just an adoption of the minutes of May 1st. Any concerns, changes required? No. So those minutes are adopted by the panel. And for May 15th, any changes, comments? Okay. We're adopting the minutes of May 15th as well. Okay, turning our attention now to some of the adjournments that we have for today. And I'm going to start with number 2, which is 633 Edison Avenue. I'm looking for Mr. Yapkatsi. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
So Mr. Yapkatsi, could you just sum up for us, please, the reasons for the adjournment?
We're going to have further discussions with the community association and the neighbor as relative to landscaping and parking.
Do you have any of those meetings set up at this point with the public?
The community association indicated that we were going to arrange a Zoom call sometime this coming week. So.
Okay. I also understand that you've requested August 21st.
Yes, please.
All right. Okay, before we get into that, any questions for Mr. Yalkotzi on the adjournment? No. All right. Is there anyone in the audience, either in person or online, who would like to speak to the adjournment request? Good afternoon.
Tim Gray from the Westboro Community Association. We're fully for the adjournment. Some of the neighbors have some, concerns about it, and they really kind of need more time. The neighbor behind is going to hire their own tree expert to have a look at the tree that's in, real conflict here. So he needs, I don't know if 2 weeks is enough, but hopefully there is one other resident that's really been involved in it. And unfortunately, he's going to be away on the 21st. So I think he wrote you to ask if, it could go another month, but to go the full month, but I'm not, that's up to you to decide, certainly.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gray. Any questions for Mr. Gray? Okay. Anyone else? Okay, not seeing any over to you, Mr. Yalkotzi. We also are in receipt of the request for an adjournment to the September. We're going to propose the September 4th date. So we already have quite a few applications on the 21st, and the agenda on the 4th is actually much more accommodating. So we will go with the 4th.
Madam Chair, I believe there's a speaker online
Okay.
who wishes to speak to the adjournment request.
All right. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, but I'm going to need your full name and your address, please.
My name is Gerald Umansky. I am at 631 Edison. My wife and I are the owners of the property immediately north of and adjacent to the application that's before the committee today. Certainly, we are also seeking an adjournment. I would like to point out to the committee, however, that one of the reasons that we feel that the adjournment is necessary is that the notice of variances that was posted on the property is somewhat misleading. Either deliberately or inadvertently, it refers to the construction of a detached dwelling and a semi-detached dwelling, which is very common in that neighborhood. It's the same configuration as the property on the corner of Edison and Dovercourt at the other side. But that's not what this is. This is actually 3 units of 3 apartments So it is a fundamentally different configuration. And I believe that the sign is misleading and it has led to less participation from the community than might otherwise have been the course. So we would be suggesting that in the notice that redefines the date that the hearing shall be held, that it specify that it is a dwelling comprised of 3 apartment units and a semi comprised of 6 apartment units, so that it is brought to the attention of the neighborhood exactly what is before the committee. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We will not be requiring a recirculation, so we won't be able to make those changes for this application at this point, but I do want to share with you that the committee has the same concerns about a number of applications that we've been in receipt of over the last few months, where in actual fact, it is misleading to read the notice. They're meeting, just to be clear, they're meeting the Planning Act definition of what they need to have in the notice. But for the purposes of consultation, true disclosure or full disclosure on these things, we would be looking for on the applications from now an actual count of the number of units that are being proposed. It comes out in the hearings in any event, and all it does is stall discussion if that information isn't forthright in the notice. So you will see a change in that practice as we move forward. So with that, we're back to a date. I think we're going to confirm September 4th. Mr. Yalkatsu.
Madam Chair, I'm unavailable September 4th and the following hearing date. I've got my first vacation in a couple of years. And I have a 103-year-old mother-in-law that lives with me. And therefore, I had to book these things long in advance, unfortunately. That's why we're hoping to be able to have the hearing in August. And I might refer to the issue that you're grappling with, I think, in terms of dwellings and units. As we're all aware, from a planning matter perspective, what needs to be considered is the type of dwelling that is being proposed under the zoning bylaw. The number of units that are part of that, and that's part of what we'll see in the future as part of our what's called a form-based zoning bylaw. The unit count important because we do put it in our reports, we do put it in all of the other aspects, and we do put it in the rental, like whether they're going to be rented or owned or condominium or whatever the case might be. But in the end result, and that's why we're trying to, I guess, send a message in some way to the community, because this has been an issue to talk more about, why I'm happy to talk more about it. But the massing and character of the buildings is in keeping with the community, and the number of units that are within those, it can't be characterized as a triplex. It can't be characterized as a apartment building. It's simply a semi-detached with a primary unit and two additional units.
So Mr. Yalkatsu, we totally understand that. We know that you're completely on the side of meeting the requirements of the Act. Problem is that the regulations under the Planning Act for notification is for consultation, grassroots consultation. You're a planner, you know this. So it really comes down to, well, what's the intent? What are we really trying to achieve through that notice? What does the Planning Act, contemplate? Well, it contemplates understanding the true nature of a proposal so that everybody can weigh in on it. And what we found is, because that information hasn't been provided in a number of applications, we wind up having a long discussion about, well, what is it really and how many units is it? We're trying to head that off at the pass so it's easier for everyone and so that our hearings are more efficient. So I understand what you're saying. Fully agree with you that you meet the requirements of the law, but then I look at what the intent and the spirit of what the regulations are trying to attempt, and I would have to side with better information on the notice. So, okay, we'll leave that at that. So, Mr. Deputy Secretary Treasurer, Mr. Garnett, if you would please tell me what first meeting in October we've got then.
That would bring us to October 2nd, Madam Chair.
All right, how does October 2nd work for you, Mr. Yalkatsi?
I obviously would prefer a more immediate hearing. We did flyer the neighborhood. We did provide contact information. We sent emails to the community association. Now that was 3 weeks ago. So we do feel that a total of 5 weeks is a reasonable amount of time for us to have these discussions. With the neighbor to the north, the tree that is in question that we've talked about, which some people are saying needs to be cut down. It is a joint owned tree. And we haven't had, I mean, at the time that I went door to door, the son was at the property. The parents were returning on the Monday. So I said, please provide this to them so that they can call me so I can discuss this. In the meantime, we've got an additional arborist report that says that we can accommodate the parking and retain that tree fully. It's in very, very poor condition. It will come down at some point, but it need not come down for the construction.
All right, that's fine. I think though, from the committee members, is everyone in agreement then with the October 2nd date, just to move this along? All right. Okay, that's great. So gonna wish you a great holiday. But we'll see you back in October. I think it's important that you do that outreach before you leave. It'll give you a little more breathing room before you're off on holidays. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair and panel.
Okay. All right, so that brings us to our second adjournment, which is for, where are we here? The second adjournment is 2:30. No, wait a minute. Sorry, wrong one. Back to my other list. Hang on. Yep, the second one is, 946 Colonel By Drive. So I'm looking for Mr. Ledbell. Is he online? Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, Madam Chair.
So can you please just give us in your own words what the purpose of the adjournment is, please?
Yes, the original submission was made and omitted some language and a variance from the original or from the required variances for this application. And as a result, we're requesting an adjournment to make sure that the proper documentation is circulated to the public and that we've had an opportunity to review this again and make sure that we vet the language and the variances that are actually required for this application.
All right, thank you, Mr. LaBelle. Any questions from the panel members on this adjournment? Okay, is there anyone in the audience, either online or in person, who would like to speak to the adjournment on this application? Not seeing anybody come forward, so members of the committee, all those in favor then of the adjournment, sine die. All right, so for the record, the application is adjourned. Thank you, Mr. LaBelle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I missed the opportunity to request the possibility of being considered for an early September date. We are making sure that we submit our fee for this adjournment immediately, and also to just to expedite the correspondence required in order to secure a date in early September if possible.
All right, just bear with me for a moment. Typically, we like sine die better, Mr. LaBelle.
Sure.
We do appreciate sine die. All right, what date did you say that you were looking for then?
I see that there's a September 4th date and a September 18th date. So if the 4th is available, we'd request the 4th. But again, I don't want to put any pressure on the committee.
Okay, well, just quickly, just remind me again, what is it that you need to, I just want to make sure that you have enough time. I'm looking at this and it looks like you even have to recirculate on the basis of a new minor variance. Okay, so back over to our committee staff. Will September 4th be enough time for that to happen?
Madam Chair, it depends on the timing of receipt of, for example, the payment of the recirculation. However, if we receive that by end of day tomorrow, committee staff can circulate for September 4th. But by adjourning sine die, it essentially puts the timing in the applicant's hands. As soon as committee staff receive what we require, we'll schedule for the soonest possible hearing date.
how does that work for you, Mr. LaBelle? Because we're not saying no. We're saying
Yep.
if you can get it in and there not be a problem, then we'll see you on the 4th.
Sounds good. So that's what we'll commit to. We'll submit the payment by the end of the day tomorrow, and we'll take the best case scenario.
But we're still doing a sine die. It's on you now to make sure that
That's fine.
All right, okay. All right, so, and I think the members have voted already then. Okay, we're gonna stick it with sine die. Thank you very much. Enjoy
Thank
the
you.
rest of the afternoon. Okay. So that's a sine die on that one. Just give me a moment. I'd like to call down one other application which hasn't been brought to our attention as a possible adjournment, but through reading the application, we think it may merit being adjourned, and that's application number 1, which is for 167 Powell Avenue. Is there a Mr. or Mrs. Santa? Come on down. Good afternoon. I'm just going to need your name and your address for the record, please. Oh, can somebody help out to our speaker with the microphone, please? And I'm going to have to get you to repeat it.
Sorry, man. Patrick Schlanta, 167-169 Powell Avenue.
All right, so you're aware of you've had a chance to read the planning report on this application?
I have, yeah, and I saw in the email that it was a option, like, do you agree with all these comments? And I responded to that I agreed to accept all the comments and conditions in there.
Okay, so there's a lot of concern with regards to the functionality of what you're proposing.
Yeah.
So we have comments from essentially, our engineering division.
Yeah.
There's a lot of requirements here that as far as we're concerned, haven't proven, like we don't have any evidence that proves the functionality of what you're proposing.
Okay. There isn't, sorry, I interrupted.
So I guess what I'm telling you is
Yeah.
the committee doesn't feel very comfortable dealing with this application without having more technical evidence about the slopes actually functioning,
Okay.
given all of the concerns that have been raised by the city's infrastructure people.
Okay.
So that being the case, what we would like to see from you is that technical evidence from a qualified engineer.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot in drainage plan by a qualified engineer that integrated the initial comments on permissibility. And then I had a meeting in person with planning and engineering and integrated all of those comments that were made at that time. And I understand that there's a new staff set of comments from the first. And I committed by email to integrate those or have the engineer integrate those as well.
So I'm going to ask a question on planning stuff. Ms. Horn, have you had a chance? Because we certainly don't have any of that evidence before us. So that's the problem, right? We don't have that. So you're asking us to sort of go by good faith that somehow all of this has been addressed and now infrastructure would say, oh, we're all, it's all good. So Ms. Horn, I'm looking from an update from you on that.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. So in terms of evidence, there are certainly some of the engineering requirements that are implemented on the plan. Such as the fact that the driveway is heated. The applicant did send a drawing demonstrating a vehicle. And I think that would be a valuable drawing to be submitted to the committee.
All right, I think we need that evidence because right now all we have is a lot of concerns about the functionality without any technical evidence to say that our approving a minor variance to the zoning bylaw is actually a good idea here. So I would propose that we adjourn to possibly, so Ms. Hornback, do you have all of the information you need at this point? Because here's what we want to see is that, you know, there's clear agreement by the infrastructure people that the variation in the slopes that are being proposed will not cause any bottoming out, thank you very
Sorry.
much, on this. So is there any, do you have all the information that you need now to provide to the committee, that technical evidence?
I believe that potentially through an adjournment, and the drawings that, you know, that demonstrate the vehicle going into the driveway.
So Ms. Horton, I think we'd also like comments from the infrastructure department that they've reviewed it and that they're now satisfied with the drawings and what's being proposed. So, okay. What I'm going to suggest, I'm looking for comments. Oh, Member Blatherwick, go ahead, please.
Mr. Slanta, I'm looking at your report. And you mentioned on the first page of your rationale that item 1, proposed below grade garage being beneath the existing house frees up the rear accessory building to be a coach house, enabling a greater density. And I'm looking at your survey plan from 2021. And the second plan that you submitted with the application from this year. And I'm assuming that you've added a garage to the rear of the house since 2021.
I had one approved and have started, the helical screw piles are in and that sort of thing, but I'm doing an addition for an elevator accessibility lift, and also got the detached garage approved at the same time.
This drawing doesn't show that that's detached. It looks like it's attached to the house.
The roof line runs into the building, the overhang, but it's considered by the building department to be detached because it meets the setback requirement between buildings.
Okay.
It's marked on the approved plans as no structural attachment.
Which approved plans?
For that garage or accessory building.
We don't have that either.
No, I mean, it's in my presentation. There's snapshots of it, but it didn't seem. Well, I submitted the lot and drainage plan that I'd gone back and forth with engineering, and
so this structure has been constructed, been built, or it's
no, just the foundation elements. We were delayed quite a bit by hydro. We just got our framing inspection for the addition, and things are being built right now.
Okay. So this is a detached garage which meets setback requirements.
It does, yeah. With a lot and drainage plan, and there's a survey and a topographical survey, and
okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions from members? All right, I think what I'm hearing is that in fact, maybe more information on where you're at as well on the, if it's in your presentation, that's great, but maybe if we could have that information also funneled through to us in terms of the timeline. So Ms. Horn, I'm going to leave that to you just to give us maybe a paragraph on some of that relating specifically to the coach house. Okay. All right. We're back to, I think, trying to decide then where we're adjourning to. I'm thinking September 4th. Does that look good? How's that with you, Mr. Slanta?
Okay.
All right. Is there anyone in the audience or online who'd like to speak to an adjournment to September 4th for 167 Powell? All right. Members of the committee, all those in favor? All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Slanta, and
Thanks
we're
for your
looking
time.
forward to that information.
Okay.
All right, well, that deals with the adjournment requirements. So I'm going to go to our unopposed applications next. So starting with number 3, which is 87 Mann Avenue, looking for Miss or Mr. or Mrs. Yeah, oh, thank you very much. So I should have left it till the end. My apologies. Okay, so on that, do we have the agent? The agent online?
Good afternoon, Chair and Committee members. Sydney Zhang here, and I'm representing REII Re 87 Mann GP Inc. as the owners of 87 Mann Avenue on this
All right.
application.
Thank you. We're not actually looking for a presentation. I just want to confirm with our members that there's no further questions on this. I was going to make a call out. Anyone in the audience, either in person or online, like to speak to application number 3, 87 Mann Avenue? Seeing none. Members of the committee, all those in favor?
Yep.
Okay, the application is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Going on to the second unopposed application, number 8. So, oh yes, or somebody needs to get Ardo. If we could get it back into. Okay, so the next unopposed is 263 Laurent Boulevard, Mr. Boldzuk.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
Good afternoon. All right, again, no presentation, just one last check to see there's no questions from our committee, and I'm going to wait for our member Keklikan to regain his seat. All right, so if there's no questions, and I believe we're pretty familiar with the file, anyone in the audience want to speak either for or against? Sorry, Ms. Linker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was wondering if the panel had a chance to read the revised condition for condition 13 and if that's on the record.
We do, and thank you for that reminder. So just for the for housekeeping purposes, there is a revision to the original condition number 13 regarding a letter of undertaking. So, and I think there's correspondence. Everybody's in agreement, right? There we go. I think it when things like that happen. So if there's no one who wants to speak for or against the application at this point, members of the committee, all in favor? So the application is approved. Member Keklikan, you're in favor? Number 8. 263 Saint Laurent Boulevard. All in agreement? Okay. The application is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, now we're going to go to our longer list of things. And we're going to start with application number 4 for 8284 Norman Street, looking for agent Grant Henley. Good afternoon. So I'd like to start with both your names and your municipal addresses, please.
So Jason Grant, 5510 South Island Park Drive in Manotick.
Joe Catronio, 651 Rowanwood Avenue.
Thank you. Okay, so I don't think we're looking for a presentation on this item, but I'm going to open it up to questions from the committee at this point. Anyone? We're talking about constructing a 2-story detached dwelling containing a studio.
Sure, I have a couple of questions.
Yes, member Bladerick, go ahead, please.
I'd appreciate it if the second floor plan could be put up so we could take a look at it.
Should be on, it should be on page 8.
Yeah. Is it
Sorry,
possible that-
page 9.
Staff are bringing it up now, Madam Chair.
So Mr. Grant, I'm looking at this, the actual principal dwelling unit is at the front of this structure that fronts on Norman?
Yes,
Okay. And where's the bedroom in this dwelling?
and it's a studio apartment. It's on the top right corner. Sorry, the top left, looking at the plan. Yeah.
So this is, the intention is that the owner will be living here full time,
That's correct.
and that this space will not be converted to another use at some point in the future.
No, that is not the intent. Yes.
So if the committee were to impose a condition that this space remain residential and the principal residential use in this dwelling,
Yeah. Any issue with, they're saying they don't want this ever converted to become something else like more.
Yeah.
So.
The residential part?
The residential part, yeah.
No.
No.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, because it's, I'm looking at this and this is a very large garage with a small apartment attached, as far as I'm concerned. And quite frankly, I have a question for planning. How does this qualify as a dwelling, given what's being proposed?
Thank you, Mr. Blatherwick. A dwelling unit in the zoning bylaw is defined as a residential unit that is used or intended for the use as a residential premises by one household and not more than 3 roomers or boarders and contains no more than 4 bedrooms. This application, based on my understanding, has gone through the building permit stage, and this is where the minor variance or the deficiency was caught and triggered to go to committee of adjustment. The zoning plans examiners at that stage have determined that this can be qualified as a single detached dwelling.
Okay. So I assume that therefore, Ms. Linker, that somewhere out there, there's a set of criteria for determining whether a structure like this can be classified as a single detached dwelling.
I believe that there is some sort of criteria, but the zoning plans examiners have spoken with the applicant and internally through building code services and have become satisfied that they can determine that this is a single detached dwelling.
Well, if we could get a copy of those criteria, I think it would help to inform us in the future of what is or what is not a dwelling. Dwelling.
If it's written somewhere, I can provide that. I'm not sure if it's ambiguous or.
Okay, well, when you get a chance.
Member Blatherwick, it's interesting because the thought that crossed my mind, and we were all grappling with this, Ms. Linker and our applicants, because it didn't look like to us. I mean, it's very unusual in terms of what you would otherwise consider to be a residential detached dwelling. And so what I think we may want to do, Mr. Garnett, is to add this one. This is a very interesting one. I think all of the members of the committee might benefit from getting building code services to maybe present how they came to that conclusion on this particular application, because we may see this again.
Mhm.
Don't know, but it's a learning opportunity, and I appreciate Member Blatherwick raising it for us. So if we could just make a note that perhaps we get this on an agenda over the next 6 months.
Okay, so noted, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Okay, Member Lecaillé.
Yeah, just a question to the applicant. So in the proposal, there's 3 existing detached dwellings that will be demolished. Do you know if this, like the current status, they've already been, like if there were residents there, they've been displaced and they've left, or because the unit's been sold? I'm just kind of curious of that.
Well, they're all empty now. They've all, sewer and water has been disconnected, hydro disconnected. One unit has been empty for, I don't know, 10 years.
Okay.
There's 84 Norman is the more recent one. And as of, I don't know, 6 months ago, there were tenants there.
And so that you don't know the number of tenants that might have been displaced as a result of this?
Great.
Thank you.
Sorry, just on your last concern, just in terms of the building code, Warren Zanter we've been working with him for several years, so he'll be able to give you the full explanation of how it's considered a single family home and all the rest of it, yeah.
And just to confirm, I know you did, but I want to hear it, and I guess no plans for any other use in those spaces.
Look I've had to jump through hoops for the city on this one. This has been on the table for 3 years. And I think I've signed off on a number of things, that I'm not going to be using it for other purposes.
They've requested that for sure.
I was born and raised on Preston Street. I want to stay down there. And this is part of what I want to do. To me, it's a single family home just built in reverse. It's got a larger studio space than there is dwelling. So I never saw a big problem with it. I never saw a problem with, why someone has to tell me I need 4,000 square feet to live in when I don't need it.
Very good point. Very good point. So that's, we're, reassured to hear that because, so just so you understand the committee's perspective on this, there's, sometimes we have been misled, so right? So we're making sure that in fact the intent is what the intent is supposed to be. So,
And the city has asked that, that it's not, that all the pieces are decommissioned, that they are in fact art pieces, that it's not going to become a garage, where things are being maintained and fixed and all that. It's not for that. It's really an art collection that has a simple studio attached to it. Yeah.
all right, fair enough.
Sure.
Yep, Member Blatherwick.
So, Mr. Grant, Mr. Cotroneo, if we had a condition that the area shown on the plans as a principal dwelling unit shall remain as a principal dwelling unit for the life of the building, you're okay with that? You've already said that's what it's going to be.
For my life or
The life of the building. No. The building will probably outlast both of us.
Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with it.
Okay.
Right.
So that's
Just a question on procedure for that one though. So from our Deputy Secretary Treasurer is, can we apply that kind of condition in this case?
Madam Chair, it would be a little unusual in that we're typically dealing with existing buildings. I would suggest that it would perhaps be in conjunction with the typical condition that contemplates future construction, together with a restriction on, as I understand it, the proposed residential portion remaining for residential use. I think it would be two conditions, likely.
All right, if you can find the right words for that then. Oh, sorry.
Well, I do have a question though. What if somebody down the road, after my lifetime, decides to buy the place and wants to convert it to, I don't know, 6 units? Like
Then that's fine. They're back to us.
They're back to you,
us.
yeah.
They're back to us. All right, sorry, I missed a hand somewhere. Was it Ms. Linker or?
I'm sorry. Hi, Madam Chair. I just want to speak to this because I'm dealing with kind of a situation about uses in a different file of the committee, not on this panel, but we're just trying to understand if the opportunity to condition future uses when something's changing via a minor variance. And I would just restricting a use in perpetuity in terms of how do you enforce that, I think is the question to think about. And, we've been thinking about on planning side and how do we do that? And the thing is to say, if there's a condition to say only used for principal residence, this isn't my file, so I don't know the strict details, but in terms of how does a future buyer know that? How does it get caught? That's the reason why, planning doesn't typically ask for conditions on minor variances for that precise reason. So I would just encourage the committee to think about that if they're trying to restrict it, if that's the appropriate way. Usually when we're trying to restrict uses for a longer period of time, that's why we go through zoning bylaw amendment process, not typically for minor variance, but I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. I take it you're Ms. Gretchen?
Ms. Scatchney.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for that pronunciation. Okay. Member Coakley, had your hand up.
No, I was going to ask exactly the same question as you did, Madam Chair, who that speaker was, because it wasn't identified on the screen.
Sorry, what's the speaker? I didn't catch that.
No, I was going to ask exactly the same question you did, because the previous speaker was not identified and I was wondering who it was.
Oh, all right. Okay, thank you. Okay, so Member Blatherwick, going back to that condition then, because this is unusual and and I'm worried about how do we actually enforce it going forward. I prefer to discuss it with the building code people and ask them, like, look at actual tools that we might be able to use. Sorry, Ms. Lankar. It's a good thing people are watching this way.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I just thought I'd interject and just confirm that the R4UD zone, which the site is subject to, only permits residential uses. It doesn't currently permit commercial uses under the current zoning bylaws. So if that helps ease any concern regarding that, I just wanted to point that out.
All right, and it really would become then a bylaw enforcement issue if something happened. All right. I'm going to side on the not going with the condition at this particular point. What does anybody else think? Any other thoughts on that? Because I'd rather get more guidance on it before we. All right. Okay. So we're not going to go with the condition on that. All right. That said, where am I? Have we done is there anyone in the audience or online who would like to speak to this application, either for or against?
We did have a number of letters of support from the immediate neighbors and they're all on board. We have, reduced the side yard or increased the side yard setbacks to have more relief around the building, and that was positive. With the neighbors, we're planning on, implementing trees in the front on both ends of the property to get more green space. So we have been addressing concerns for sure.
All right, thank you. And I was in fact about to give you the last 2 minutes. Anything more you'd like to say before we vote?
Madam Chair, could we actually reserve on the issue of the conditions, please?
Yes, we can do that. The only worry that I have is I'm not sure that we can decide these things outside of having the applicants before us. And I'm looking to, again, putting our Deputy Secretary Treasurer on the spot on that one.
Madam Chair, excuse me, the imposition of conditions is ultimately at the discretion of the committee in providing any approval. Procedurally, it may be helpful to have the opportunity for the applicants and planning staff to speak to the wording of those conditions, if they are novel conditions that haven't been imposed in the past. But again, ultimately, discretion does lie with the committee itself.
All right, so Mr. Member Coakley, well, I guess what I'm looking from you is to hear your reservations on it then, if you could.
Well, I think I'm basically in the same zone as Mr. Blatherwick is and concerned about what might happen down the road. And I'd rather perhaps come up with something that ends up being workable than refusing. So, I think we've heard from the applicant that they are amenable to some sort of condition. So it then just becomes an issue of what sort of wording we can come up with.
So I'll just reiterate what I said, and that is that I don't feel I'm well-versed enough right now to understand how we would word that kind of condition to ensure that it's meaningful, I guess is what I'm saying. And that's why I'm proposing that we get building code services to come and talk to us about exactly this kind of circumstance, and then talk about what we may be able to do. Because as Ms. Linker pointed out, one way or the other, if there's another use that comes in that is not in keeping with the zoning bylaw, there is the zoning bylaw enforcement that happens. But I'm open to reserving one way or the other. I think that's worthy of doing right now. So I think that's the direction we're going to take. We may be imposing a condition, but we're going to have to think carefully about what the wording would be so that it makes some sense. But go ahead, please.
I'm listening to everyone right now. I'm not sure if I'm too keen on any conditions, to be honest with you, after everything I've gone through with the city for the last 3 years. I mean, to me, all these questions should have been answered before we even got here by the planners and zoning. I thought I was coming here today to clear up the issue of 3 feet, the minor variance of 3 feet. I didn't think I was coming here to deal with all these issues.
I understand. And sometimes we get into, the weeds on how do you actually ensure that the public interest is, and this is what we're really after, is protecting the public interest and a good planning result in the neighborhood. And so that's why you're hearing a lot of this discussion, is how much do we need? What can we do to protect it to the best of our abilities? Is what's, something like a zoning bylaw enforcement officer enough? Or do we think that the committee's decision should reflect something that is more guarded? So that's what you've been hearing, is that debate about how do we ensure that the public interest is in fact protected. So that said, I may go to a vote on this as to whether or not, I think it's only fair that we decide, are we going to be, we can still reserve, but I'd like to make a decision on whether or not we're going to impose a condition before we get into an in-camera session.
Well, with respect, Madam Chair, while I am leaning towards wanting a condition, I don't think we can vote on, are we going to impose a condition without knowing what the condition would be. I think we need to discuss amongst ourselves what the wording of that, a wording if we are comfortable with one.
Okay, so we're going to reserve.
So
we'll see where that discussion goes. Any further words from you?
Well, I just wanted to return to Ms. Linker's note that we would not be allowed to build anything that didn't include or at least one residential unit on this site, given the zoning condition that is there. So that building as it is now, unless that zoning changes, can never have less than one dwelling unit in it. Am I correct in
Yeah,
that?
so noted. Yeah.
Yes.
So we hear you loud and clear on that. So, okay, we're reserving. You'll get the decision in due course.
Okay, so would your decision still be within the 10-day?
Absolutely.
period? Okay.
That's part of the Planning Act. We've got to get it done.
Right.
All right. Thank you very much for your time today.
Okay.
Appreciate you coming in. Okay, so that takes us then to I'm going to go to number 7, 309 Montfort. All right, welcome again, Mr. Yalkatsi. Not looking for a presentation from you on this. I believe there are some questions though from our committee members, if I remember correctly. Is there anyone? Because we took it off the list. We took it off the list for a reason. So is it you, Member Blatherwick? Okay.
And just curious, Mr. Jalkatsi, I've looked at the report, obviously, the number of units you're providing in this semi. What's the intent for the basement area of the building? Will that be converted to residential at some point in the future? Or is it going to stay storage area and HVAC?
Madam Chair, the basement is connected by stairs to the main floor unit. And the reason why my client asked me to put it as unfinished, because they're not sure they're going to be able to finish it at this time, but it will become part of the ground floor unit. Both ground floor units are connected directly to the basement by a set of stairs. So their intention is to finish that as part of that unit sometime in the future.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Tricazzi. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Yamakatsi, by any chance, that connection, is there a door that goes out somewhere along that staircase?
Madam Chair, the building code requires a door at the bottom of the stairs because we don't have a door at the top of the stairs. You'd either have to have a door at the top or bottom of the stairs under the building code when you have an unfinished basement.
Okay. And is that all right, and that'd be an interior door is what you're proposing. So it's.
Yes, it's an interior door. There's no access to the basement from outside, from any exterior door.
All right, thank you. That's all I really wanted to know. So with that, is there anyone in the audience, either online or in person, who would like to speak to this application? Not seeing any. Then members, all those in favor? All right, it's unanimous. For the record, the application is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair and panel.
All right, thank you. Now, that brings us to our last application for 18 Elliot Avenue, looking for agents Gregoire and Trail. Good afternoon.
Hi, I'm Heather Trail. Mark Gregoire may be joining us via Zoom. He's in Halifax right now on business, and our daughter Trinity is with us as well.
Good afternoon. So we are looking for a presentation. Were you able to provide one?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So I'm kind of not sure how this works when I go like that. Are you gonna change the screen? Okay, perfect. So we are here in front of you today to ask for a variance to be approved for us to make a carport and front yard parking in order for Trinity to have access to her vehicle and to have the same freedoms and independence as able-bodied individuals. So take it away. So this is Trinity. She does have an autoimmune autonomic neuropathy. So what that means is her autonomic functions don't function the same way as ours do. Unfortunately, she did contract meningitis when she was undergoing trial treatment, and this has left her 100% dependent on a wheelchair, but this definitely has not stopped her. So next slide. So we did take a video that does show Trinity getting into her vehicle. So I didn't see everybody come in, but I'm assuming that nobody here is dependent on a wheelchair. You may have family members who are, so you may realize that everyday tasks like getting into an automobile are very difficult and they take a lot of work. So we won't play this for the sake of time unless you would like to see feats of marvel. But Trinity does get into the vehicle on her own. She takes her wheelchair apart piece by piece and puts each piece either beside her or behind her in the vehicle. And yes.
I'm just like to canvass the members. Would you like to see the video? It's 2.5 minutes or 3 minutes. Well, almost 3 minutes. Yeah. Would you like to see it? No? All right. Okay. It is part of your presentation, so we can access it, I take it?
Yeah, but it's not a part of my 5 minutes.
No.
So
that's
it
great.
would
That's
be,
great.
it
No,
would
no.
be additional.
Yeah, and because you're the applicant, there's a little more leeway than if it's somebody who's speaking to an application. So-
Okay.
So don't worry about it. We're here to hear you.
Okay.
So keep going, please.
Okay. So, she can independently, go on her way and get from place to place. But there are still some barriers to that. So if you can change to the next slide, please. So we are making do with a rope and a ramp and a temporary structure right now. And we do appreciate the fact that there are no concerns with the building of the carport, which will allow Trinity to be fully covered when she is getting into and out of the vehicle, which I'm sure you can understand when it takes her over 2.5 minutes to get into the vehicle, snow clearing, all of those types of things, and keeping her vehicle clear of snow are all very important, but it does lead to the additional problem of we have a single laneway, and that poses a concern. So if you can change the next slide. So Trinity does drive with hand controls. So that means that she is not able to move any other vehicles that may be parked behind her. And because the carport is at the back of the property, that means that the rest of the laneway, we can't use that to park our vehicle. So what we are asking for is for you to allow us at the front of our driveway to have an area that we can park off to the side so that that single laneway that already exists is always clear for Trinity to come and go. If you can change to the next slide. So how we intend to make this work and keeping the concerns of the city and all of the planning departments that gave their feedback would be to extend the existing front patio. We would use interlock. We wouldn't pave in order to have the most drainage possible on a hardscape. Okay. We would ensure that the minimum 50% softscaping be maintained. Change to the next slide, please. Also, the impact of front parking was a concern. And it's important for you to note that there would only be one vehicle in view at the front of the house. That secondary lane that already exists would always be clear because Trinity is parking in the back underneath the carport. So there would only be one vehicle at the front at any time. There wouldn't be two vehicles parked side by side. In addition, it was noted that the front curb appeal of a home is important in the neighborhood. And with our home actually being a legal duplex, it's kind of interesting that there are two doors stacked on top of each other. So even if one car were to be parked in front of the lower front door, there is still a door at the front. And so it does maintain a nice curb appeal for the area. Next slide, please.
Can I just ask a quick question
Sure.
then on that? So it's a duplex.
It
So
is.
So your family is on the
Yeah, so
right
it was
boundary?
like an incredible find for us. So we previously lived in Stittsville, but Trinity attends Ottawa U. She trains at St. Paul's and she is at the Ottawa Hospital quite frequently. So when we found this location, it was ideal. So an apartment was built at the bottom for an aging family member. And then there are 2 floors up top, which are a separate accommodation, and that's where Mark and I live. So Trinity has her independence below with support from us when she needs it. And then we live upstairs.
Okay, so I'm just trying to understand the car parking thing for a minute then.
Right.
So it really is only your family
Correct.
that inhabits the duplex. So, and you're saying that there could be a situation where the car would be parked in the laneway, blocking
Well,
Trinity's
we-
ability to come to, so I'm
Yes.
just, but if the car's there, then I'm trying to understand why somebody wouldn't be able to move it for her, I guess.
Well, because we're not always there. So so the carport is at the very back. So for our vehicles to park, we would have to park behind her. So let's just say I go out for a walk and Trinity needs to leave and my car is parked there. Or if I ride my bike to work and I'm gone for the day, that vehicle is there and Mark is traveling. Like there is not always somebody there to move a car for her, but sometimes there's a second family car that's there.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
Go ahead.
Yeah, forestry did have concerns. So one was the 50% of the softscaping, which we are totally in agreement that should be maintained. The other is we do have a city Norway maple on our property, and we have done everything that the arborist had indicated in order to ensure the health of that tree. And for the front parking, it was indicated by the arborist that only 90% of the root zone would be impacted, and that type of tree can absolutely withstand that for the species can tolerate that change to its root structure. Okay, next slide, please. So one of the things that was indicated was that parking on the street could be an answer for Trinity's freedom and accessibility. And we actually don't see that as being an answer because of the 3-hour time limits, because of snow removal, for us to park our car long-term. And it's not safe for Trinity to be parking on the street with her getting into and out of her vehicle. Next slide, please. So right of way had indicated that in looking at the proposal, the length of the car space was underneath what is required. So I think 5.2 meters is required. When you take a look at how much room we have up until the pillar at the front, we have just under 5 meters. And we do have 2 average size cars that would fit within that spacing that would not be encroaching onto the city property at all. We also do not need to change the access point because like I indicated, there would never be a car on the single area except for at the back. So we would be able to use the already existing access point to get into and out of that space when it was needed. Okay. So we really appreciate being able to come and ask you to make an exception in our case for this ask. I've always heard that term, it takes a village. Really learned that when Trinity got sick. So we don't have any opposition from our community. The community is very supportive. All of our neighbors are like, absolutely do what it takes. We appreciate that the city has bylaws in order to maintain a proper flow and proper communities. But we also do understand that there's exceptions to every rule. So in your new official plan, it does state that you have the ability through decision-making to advance human health on the built environment. And you have the opportunity now to allow us to make these changes in order so that Trinity has an accessible living space here within the city of Ottawa for herself and then for potentially somebody in the future. We ask for your support in this.
All right, thank you very much for that presentation. It really is very helpful for us to understand your circumstances. Okay, and I'm very impressed that you found the right policies from the official plan to pull out and for us to consider. So we thought about that when we deliberated before we got in here. Certainly those kinds of policies are very helpful. So I see there are questions. So Member Coakley, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So yes, thank you very much for that presentation. It really was very helpful. You know, it put the human element as much as the sort of some of the technical side of things in play, and in a very, you know, in a very good way. So I do appreciate it. And, you know, and for someone who isn't a professional planner, congratulations. I do have a couple of questions, though. I'd just like to follow up on the parking issue. And you did partly, I would say you partly addressed one of my questions, which was the on-street. I take your point about the 3-hour time limit. I take your point. I definitely take your point that it would only be, you know, you and your partner's car that could be parked there. And I do take the point about snow clearing in the winter. However, I think the concern, I mean, what you have said is if your car is in the driveway, it blocks her access to the car. Fair enough. But for those periods of time when you are out of the house, would the 3-hour time limit really be an issue? And would the overnight parking bans, snow clearing bans, would that really be an issue? Like, I mean, I guess how often are you out of the house for more than you and your partner out of the house for 3 hours at a stretch? My second question, again, relating to the parking is there any alternative capacity for reconfiguring the back of the house to allow for 2 cars to be parked in the back such that you wouldn't need to park one in the front?
I'm going to answer your second question first.
By all means.
And then you might have to remind me what your first question was.
Okay.
So yes, some people have proposed ideas for the back. We do really value our back area, though. We do have a really nice green space in the back. We do have vegetable garden planted. We do understand that drainage is a concern, and for us to change parking in the back, we have, and I think that you could see it in one of those pictures, we do have a very well-built detached garage that would need to be demolished, which I can't imagine doing. And then we would actually have to pave over the grassed area in order to allow for driving in and having secondary parking. And then we would not be able, like, it would be very difficult then to have the attached carport that would cover Trinity's entry space and allow her to park and access. So thank you for showing that picture. So that is why making those changes was not an option for us. So time-wise, I'm a teacher, and there are often times when I will bike to work. So if I'm biking to work and if Mark is traveling, so he does travel a lot for work, there are times when a vehicle will sit there all day. And I know that it's not ideal to have a vehicle sitting all day in the front of your house when you're wanting to have this really nice curb appeal within the community. But that's just kind of the nature of me getting a little bit of exercise. I can also let you know that Trinity does value her independence, and I also, after caregiving, like, I don't always want to have to be feeling like I'm sitting at home waiting to know if my daughter needs to leave or not to move a car. So I also know that there is something coming to the city, if it hasn't already, about the our street on Elliot and like the speed and all of that kind of stuff. So they are also looking at putting up the little drive slow things. And one of them would actually be right in front, like it's proposed to be right in front of our house, which means when you have one of those little doodads, and then if we're parking on the street in front of our house, it's actually going to make it really difficult. There's also a bus stop there. which like a school bus stop that picks up kids. So I know that street parking exists, but I think that the time limits are there for a reason. And I don't think that the community actually wants us parking on the street either.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, other questions from members? Member Blatherwick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I read the forestry report, and the forestry is still online. Apparently forestry had some concerns regarding the property, if they could articulate those.
Yes. Okay. Oh, hi. I don't know where I'm supposed to look.
Yeah, and we're going to leave Mr. Alvarez Barkham speak to us, please.
Thank you. Thanks for the question, Madam Blatherwick. Yeah, so the concern is around the loss of softscape within the right-of-way. This is land that we want to maintain for planting purposes, ideally, as much as possible. So any loss of softscape within our property is a permanent loss for us, and that makes it harder for us to replace trees down the line and plant new ones. So that's my main opposition to this. And
there'd be if this gets
can I
right.
talk to that?
No, actually, it's between Member Blatherwick and staff right now.
If this additional parking space were to be approved, what impact is it going to have on the tree that's there now? The Norway maple, which is a city tree, I believe.
It is, yes. It's a bit confusing because the report that was provided indicates that some of the work has already been completed, so I'm not really sure what the extent of that is. The recommendations that the applicant highlighted were ones that were sort of remedial due to the damage that was already done to the city tree. But certainly like the extent of impact is fairly minimal and tolerable for a tree of that size and that health. Though the main concern really is about the loss of softscape.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Member. Oh, sorry.
And I've just heard from forestry that some work has been done on site. Would you care to inform the committee of what's been done?
Yes. So we moved in September, and we were working to try to get this approved for last winter. And when we found that we needed the tree assessment, that this is all new to us. When we found out that we needed the tree assessment, we weren't able to get an arborist at that time. And somebody had come in and done the work to clear the section that would be used for the front parking. And so all of the area that would be used for front parking has already been completed. We have made all of the improvements to the root structure, like being clean cut with a disinfectant blade to do the light mulching. We removed all of the mulch around the tree stump. And when the health of the tree was checked by the arborist, it was only that 9% of the root bed that was impacted. So there would be no other changes to the tree. The tree's just going to get healthier. Like there's not going to be any changes. They did indicate that when the carport be made, that we not utilize the front in any way so that the root system of the tree does not get impacted. And we will absolutely look at that. Like we'll respect that.
So what you're saying is you've already constructed the parking space?
At the front, yes.
Without the benefit of a building permit?
Correct.
Thank you.
Member Coakley?
Thank you. So I just wanted to follow up with Mr. Alvarez Barkham on Mr. Blatherwick's first question. I appreciate what you were saying about losing the right-of-way space that would then not be available for soft landscaping or any type of landscaping in the future. But let me just put it to you in a sense, the reverse of what I put to, to the applicant a few minutes ago. Were it to prove possible, and I accept there might be some impediments to this, but were it to prove possible to have 2 parking spaces in the back of the car, in the back of the property, if that would in and of itself require an amount of soft landscaping to disappear because it would be effectively paved over, is that not almost a bit of a wash between the front and the back in terms of that concern?
Thanks for the question, Member Coakley. Through you, Madam Chair. It isn't necessarily a wash because the land within the right-of-way has more protection than the land on private property. So in terms of tree planting opportunities and tree protection, there's much more that we can do with our own property, essentially, than that on private property.
Any further questions, Member Coakley? All right. No, come back to me, please, Mr. Alvarez-Barkham. I had more questions for you myself. Okay, so one of the things that we often look at with, you know, if we were leaning and inclined to permit this front yard parking space, I think from my standpoint and from a streetscape standpoint, I would want to hear more about how we might screen it. And I wondered whether or not there was any discussion about that and how we might actually add some soft landscaping in order to provide that screening so that we can improve 2 different situations.
My understanding from the design that I've seen, like there would be no opportunity to screen it once that sort of parking space, well, since that parking space has already been created, it sort of goes up to the curb. Which means that we couldn't really screen it. There's nothing really for us to do there.
Okay, so I thought there was a city right-of-way. I thought there was some distance, and I'm trying to look for a plan on this. So you're saying there's absolutely no room based on that parking space. Just want to confirm that with our applicant. Is the parking space the one that we're asking for reduction in size in addition right up to the curb?
So I'm not sure what the screening means, but as it stands right now, there is interlock that goes from the existing interlock to the sidewalk area. But if it meant lifting some of that up, the forestry individual, with it being a Norway maple, I'm not sure if others are aware of that type of tree and how it grows. It is a beautiful tree, but nothing will grow underneath it. So the root structure is such that it strangles everything. So it would be my hope that that tree lives on and does not need to be taken up and a new tree replanted, because that would be an extraordinary amount of work in order for that to take place. The previous owners, like I have actually done a really good job with utilizing our Indigenous planting in the area to try to get some growth underneath it. But that is a type of tree that definitely works to survive and does a very good job at that.
All right, thank you. I'm going to ask actually planning then a quick question on some of this. Sorry, it's sorry. So, pronounce your name again for me, please. Your last name is Getchen?
Miss Gatchney.
Okay, so I'm looking at the drawing and I appreciate that it's built already, but I'm wondering, so let's say for a minute that it's not built and we're looking at squeezing an undersized but workable parking space there. Would there be, and what I have in mind is how could we screen it that might help with that soft scape and that kind of thing. So I'm looking at the concrete porch, and then I'm looking at interlock, wondering whether or not, pulling up that parking space makes any sense. Knowing that, in fact, there's room in the driveway for maneuvering. So I'd like to explore that. Is it possible through a redesign of this that we might lessen the impact from a landscaping standpoint?
I'm looking at the plan at the same time. It's difficult for me to say, just trying to imagine how the site would function. Obviously, it depends on, I mean, people have their own way of how they see their site's going to function. We've seen that with other sites, I think, before, where people are trying to angle their driveway a certain way to fit in the car. And I'm just trying to think about how the benefit would be. That would be something I'd have to think about more. But I think in terms of, it's like we're screening versus functionality for the applicant, right? Like, yes, we won't see a car from the front, which is, beneficial. But will that impede like the impact for them? That's a decision kind of the applicant has to think through if they're going to redesign as well.
And it's unfortunate that we didn't have a chance to kind of go through some of those options, because I have seen angled versus straight up. Sometimes there's a way to fit it in a way that works.
And that is something that we would absolutely look at doing if that would be pleasing to yourself. One of the things that we didn't want to do was set up, like we could drive in and then park our car so that it's kind of parallel to our home, so that there's no, so that we're not impacting the city property at all. But we didn't think that people were going to want to see the side view of our vehicle in front of our house.
Yeah,
So
definitely not talking about doing that.
Yeah,
I can
no,
assure you.
but then I didn't
Nothing more
realize
sensitive.
that the screening thing, I'm assuming that means that you put up some sort of kind of structure or something so that you don't see the car. I don't know. I'm just,
Oh, just hedges.
Oh,
Often.
okay.
It's just, we're talking about adding vegetation that helps to soften that appearance.
right.
Okay, I think that's it for my questions. Anyone else? All right, I think we're at the public portion at this point. I wasn't sure. I don't think we have any speakers, and I haven't really looked too much. Yeah, so I don't think we have any speakers on this one, right? Is there anyone in the audience online that would like to speak to this this application, either for or against? All right, I'm not seeing anybody come forward, so going to give you the last couple of minutes, and then the committee will then make a decision.
All right, Madam Chair, would it
sorry.
be possible for planning just to provide a couple of comments here? One of them is more of a housekeeping matter for the notice and the decision if you proceed with it. The other is just want to clarify and provide some context in terms of policy. The first is more housekeeping. So the notice says for the parking space reduction, I believe it's variance B, is a reduction from 5.2 to 4.9. The plans say to 4.44. So it is a greater reduction. It's not, the effect is the same. So, but it's just, if for the purposes of the decision, it should say 4.44 and instead of 4.9.
Sorry, I'm just looking to see if that's in the planning report. Did I miss that?
I didn't think, it was just, I saw it, but I forgot to include it in my report. So my apologies for that.
Okay, because at this point, normally when greater relief is required, then we do go to a recirculation on an application. And it looks like the relief is greater based on what you've just mentioned to us. But I think I'm willing to grant, without having to go to recirculation, looking for comments from my panel members. But I think given that the space is already there, I think if there had been a lot of opposition, it would have been to the space rather to the dimensions. So I am inclined to not require recirculation, but I'm looking for comments on that. Member Coakley?
Yes, Madam Chair, I would be in agreement with you. I think, whether the front facing parking is 4.5 meters or 4.5, 4.96 meters, I doubt if anybody would have decided not to comment on the basis of 0.4 meters. And it would be they either agree with the parking in the front or they disagree with the parking in the front, and that would have been the reason why they would or would not have submitted comments. So as I say, I would completely agree with you that recirculation under the circumstances is probably not required.
I agree, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Any dissents on that one? No? Okay, all right, well, thank you. So we're not recirculating. I think you had a second point that, go ahead.
Yes, I know, that was, that the applicant's application materials was correct. It was just an error with the notice, when it was circulated. So it was, so the applicant had submitted everything correctly and accurately. Anyway, so moving on, I just wanted to highlight that we do recognize that the official plan direction is not sensitive, maybe as it should be, to design changes when there's accessibility considerations. And that when we're looking at sites and proposals such as this, that's why, there's a focus on appearance and landscaping, but planning does recognize that there is a need to accommodate circumstances, but we're obviously also negotiating the technical aspects as well and the zoning bylaw. That's all I wanted to point.
So just then on that point, good point, by the way. So is there a policy? Are you saying there's a policy in the official plan that says that where there's an accessibility need, that there is, I guess, more leeway in the design and relief that might be sought?
No, there's not a policy. No, so there's no policy that says that. And that's a reason why, and partially why, like, planning is informed by the policies. We have policies that say we prioritize soft landscaping over parking and private approaches. But we don't have policies that we're working with that say accessibility considerations and how they impact how we make recommendations from a planning perspective. So I leave that up to the committee to, with that information, what they will in terms of the policy versus what is being requested today.
All right, thank you very much for that. Anybody want to follow up with on those comments? No? Okay. Back to you then, in terms of just completing your closing comments.
I think that just to wrap up, we do understand that this is an exception. We do understand that it does not meet the overall plan of the city of Ottawa. But just as you had indicated, I think the overall plan of Ottawa is actually changing to become a more accessible Ottawa. And so we are asking for you to provide for and allow this variance to actually start that change.
All right, thank you. And of course, there is a national act now, a federal act and provincial acts that would support those comments. So, Member Coakley.
Sorry, I do apologize for not raising this earlier. I know the risk of opening up the debate from a few minutes ago. I'm assuming, and maybe that's not entirely fair, but I'm assuming that from the applicant's perspective, were we to grant the variance with some sort of condition tying it to as long as your daughter is in residence in the unit, that you would not have any problem with that, or is that an unfair assumption?
I would absolutely not have a problem with that, but it's also would be a long-term vision that if Trinity was no longer utilizing it, that like accessible housing in Ottawa right now is very difficult to find. So it would be an ideal opportunity for either another family or another individual to come in. So I'm not sure if you as a panel would want to impose that, but I have no problem with it.
If I could, I mean, I take your point. I think, the part of the issue is it is an exemption. It's from the current bylaw, assuming the bylaw stays the same, making an exemption on the basis of an accessibility issue is one thing. Extending the exemption on the basis of, well, we just like parking our car in front of our house, from another person's perspective would be an entirely, for me anyway, would be an entirely different consideration. So, but thank you for your answer. I mean, again, we obviously have to have a discussion amongst ourselves as to how we might, if we even want, word conditions like that, and that helps me in my considerations. Thank you.
As an accessibility issue, like absolutely 100%, we are all on board with that. That is why we are asking for this.
All right, so with that, I think I'm hearing that the panel members would like to reserve on this, okay? The only other comment that I would make in closing on this is, you know, it seems to me that there might have been a better solution overall. And I would encourage you, if in fact there's an approval, because if there's no approval of this, then of course you can't maintain that parking space. But in the event that you do have an approval, you've heard some of the comments about how we can allow that interlocked space maybe to work better. And I would just, you know, encourage you to pursue with the city and maybe with our forestry people, whether or not there's a way to make some minor modifications to that space so that it fits in a little better.
I would absolutely. My dad worked with the Ministry of Agriculture, so planting is like very important to me as well. So yes.
All right, so with that, you will get our decision within 10 days. All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you very
today.
much.
All right, thank you. With that, what brings us to the end of our agenda. I think our business is closed unless anybody wants to raise anything else. And with that, we're adjourned. Thank you. We have 2 items that are reserved, so we'll see you soon, Member Cookley.